Christina, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining me, and nice to meet somebody who I only know online.
Absolutely. It feels like that's kind of the theme of the past year.
Yeah, well, nearly 2 years now. 18 months, I think. We're deep into this.
That's been tough, yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the 20th episode of the Sixth Session. This week, it's a return to one of my favorite topics: community. Community is powerful. It can drive growth, give a level of insight you wouldn't otherwise have, and it can create those all-important fans. Each week, I get to chat to somebody in the growth space, be that marketing, sales, or CX. The idea is I speak with people smarter and more impressive than I am, making me smarter by association. The sessions are live, and we'll try to keep it short and sweet, and they're definitely unfiltered. This week, I have the pleasure of speaking with HubSpot's community builder in chief. We're going to talk about the power of listening, how brands can better connect with their audiences, and why community is such a powerful thing. You'll recognize her from a whole host of HubSpot Academy videos, as well as being a contributor to Adweek next week, and she's even a nominee for Sprout Social's Community Builder Award. So with all that in mind, I'm excited to welcome Christina Garnett. Christina, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk.
Pleasure. So first question, top level, what is it you do? What's your role at HubSpot?
I'm the Senior Marketing Manager for Offline Community and Advocacy. Basically,
quite a long title.
A little bit. The cliff notes is I get to be a fan of the fans. I get to listen, find out who are our biggest champions, who are our biggest advocates, and how can we provide opportunities for them to thrive, to be amplified as a thought leader in the HubSpot space, and just feel appreciated. A lot of what I'm doing is focusing on how I can make the people who love us the most feel loved back.
Nice, good answer. So how did you get into the community game in the first place?
By like most people in the community game, it kind of happened by accident. I was doing a lot of marketing roles, and when I was at an agency, they had essentially community managers who were going through all the comments, making sure and seeing are people happy? Do they need anything? And I was leading and a part of those teams where I'm basically the intermediary between the brand and those groups. So if they had questions, if there was a specific trending topic around that brand, making sure that those managers knew what had to be involved, what to escalate, what not to escalate. And essentially, a lot of this happened last year, really being able to get a temperature check. That was really priceless, and be able to see what trends are we seeing? What are people talking about? Is there a negative sentiment today, positive sentiment today? And talking to the brand social team, if they especially wanted something large to publish that day, to basically say, hey, Christina, can you check and see where things are? Because we don't want, if there's a flood of negative sentiment on our feed, this is not going to be a good time for us to publish anything. So I've essentially always, as a marketer, been in a space of social listening, audience intelligence, even before I knew the vernacular that went with that. But it starts by accident. The more you lean into that customer base, and if you come from a really customer first perspective, you start doing community work, even though you don't realize you're doing community work.
Feels like there's in SaaS terms, it feels like there's a heavy element of voice of the customer, also coupled with a bit of customer success role in there as well. But with people who might not necessarily be a customer. Absolutely.
And the thing is that but community has been such a buzzword this year, but I for good and for bad. But I think that it's an opportunity to really talk about how there's been a lot of people who've been doing this for a very long time, and that what it really fosters is whether or not you believe in community first, you need to believe in customer first. And so when you're thinking about a customer and you're thinking about how you make them feel, you start asking yourself the same questions that you would as a community builder. Where do they live? How can I provide value? What are their questions? What resources do they need? Okay, now that I know what the answers to those are, how can I provide value and be able to create a space for those people to get what they need? And I mean, that's what we see with Inbound, the conference. I mean, how many people do you know that you wind up creating these relationships between people that you meet online or people that you've had a class with when you took something with Academy, and then you get the opportunity to be a part of this Inbound community, this really large, and the only access point is just get a ticket. And now that it's virtual and there's that free pass, that's now the entry level is the door is extremely accessible. So being able to open that door to people to say, Here are resources to learn, HubSpot or not HubSpot, but here's opportunities to find resources, to meet others, to ask questions, to learn. And so what you wind up doing is you wind up having those connections. And so I find that it makes so much sense for HubSpot to have like a really thriving community, because it's inbound, it's relationship based. It's all about making these connections, adding value, giving before you take. And so it feels so naturally ingrained.
I think so. One of the things that I've missed most about being like going through the last 18 months, like pandemic times, is the inbound conference. So I think we'll miss 2 of them by the time it goes. So last year's, and I think this year's all is remote only for international anyway. And the partner events that we do. So like that is my connection with the HubSpot community and like a physical presence. And I think whenever I go to one of those things, it's not about the content, it's about the community, it's about the people that you see between the rooms and the connections that are made over a beer afterwards and all that kind of stuff. So like, and I think my view on HubSpot and from a partner perspective has always been that community has empowered us to get to where we are, to like a very healthy extent, which is great. So for brands, where's the value in community? Like, why are they such a powerful thing?
CMX does a really great job with this. They have a model, it's a spaces model, and it breaks down the individual things. So like the first one, the S is support. And so a lot of people, when they're starting a community, it usually comes from a support basis, where this is where people can ask questions and get help. And that's really been like the cornerstone of the HubSpot community page right now, is here's where you can get questions. You can hear from like power users. And so that's established. But then you also have all these other levels where you're able to get business acquisition, where you're able to spread word of mouth, where you're going to get collaboration, where you have, and a lot of partners do this amazingly, is you create content. There's the operations hub that was launched, and you're dropping a blog about like what you are excited about it, or you're making YouTube video. So what you have is you have all these individual positions and opportunities for people to behave and help you the way they want to help. So one of the things that I find very important is when you join a community, you have essentially your uniform, you have your standards, you have your like guidelines of how we behave. And I usually compare this to being at a sporting event. You are going to wear a jersey, or you're going to wear a hat with the logo. You're going to know what songs to sing, what chants to say, where to sit. You're going to know where concessions are and where the bathrooms are. Like there's specific behaviors and specific places and things to do based on what your needs are within that base. And some of you may not be loud, but you may be big donors, or you may not be big donors, but you're like the loudest person in that stadium. So you're able to contribute in your own way. And so from community, you're going to be able to offer brands multiple ways to do that. You have influencers who are going to shout your name through the rooftops. You have power users who are going to answer questions and be held to the same standard that your support team is. And that also helps your support team, because now there's not as much weight on them. You're going to have people sharing word of mouth that are offering leads. I say all the time, a brand can say how great they are all day long. Of course you are. Of course you're going to say that. But when a complete stranger says it, it holds so much more weight. Like you go on Amazon or you go on any page and you look at reviews, you don't know any of those people, but you're going to hold it with regard. You're going to believe it. And so that's what community gets to do for you. They get to be that external voice that's telling everyone how great you are, but that voice is believed. That voice is going to get you leads. It's going to get you awareness. And that's going to drive loyalty, because now those people feel special. And now we're talking about brand equity. Now, not only are they helping build awareness for you, they're also helping build loyalty for you, because when they say how much they love you, and then you see that brand right back and be like, we heart you back. We love that you love this. It's all about relationships and emotions, but those emotions drive real metrics.
So this is a horrible question, and I'm sorry.
I'm worried with that preface.
I'm sorry it's even going to come out of my mouth. But like how, like if you were talking to a brand about like, hey, you should go and start a community, how would you say to them like, and here is how you should frame that ROI in your head? And that's the horrible bit. There's like where everybody starts talking about ROI off different channels. But like, how would you tell them to frame that?
Yeah, so they need to base it around their goals. It's just like with any strategist. I do a lot of strategy work. And so my first question is always, or my first statement is always, it depends. So what do you want? What are your goals for this community? So if you just want growth, that's going to be hard because that's long game. Slow growth is always going to be sustainable growth. But if you're wanting word of mouth, then those are metrics that you can quantify. You can look at positive mentions. You can look at brand mentions. You can look and see like what conversations people are having about you. And looking at the comments to see, all right, well, this partner responded, but then right underneath this, the person who originally asked the question was like, oh, that's really cool. I can't wait to check out so-and-so. So what you're going to do is, it's long game, but you're able to find those quick wins. So if you're looking for brand awareness, then you're going to look for mentions, and you're going to look that across multiple channels. You're going to look at sentiment. You're going to be able to figure out what's happening. Tracking codes. If you do have like an advocacy program, I'm a massive fan of UTMs because there's a way for you to determine, all right, well, this person, we want to use them as an influencer, but how much are they actually driving our way? Are they driving people to an event? Are they driving people to a conversation in community? By being able to use those tracking links, now we're able to actually see, like, it's all about numbers. And I get that. It's not a bad question. It's valid. You have to, if you want a seat at the table, you have to measure why you should have it. So being able to track links, be able to determine what those look like. But what I really like is a framework. So we have the customer journey for inbound marketing. We should look at it the same way for members within a community. What kind of behaviors do we want them to have and do at the very beginning? So you join this community, what does that look like for them? And what would you want them to do? And then now they go deeper. Well, what behaviors are they more likely to do there? And then what would they do? What would we want them to do? And then deeper. Now we're looking at conversation starters. We're looking at solution providers. We're looking at people who we want to elevate, maybe do a blog or an AMA with. But when you look at it from that way, then you're going to be able to, just like with inbound marketing, think about, well, what are the metrics that would be associated with these different parts of that journey so that we can decide what we need to be tracking, who we need to be targeting, what we need to be looking out for. So not only are we able to determine ROI, but we're also keeping in mind that we're doing it from the perspective of the member as they're going through that community journey.
If a brand wanted to jump in and start using community as a growth channel,
mm-hmm.
where should they start? Like how should they get the ball rolling on this?
I would do an audit. So I would do a full audit of all social communities, current communities, external communities where their potential members could be a part of. You need to do a full audit, and you need to be able to figure out where these people live currently and what their needs are. So once you figure out where they live, and it's going to be multiple places because we don't all live in one like I don't just live on Twitter, even though it may seem like that. Like we all live in multiple pockets. So finding out where these people live and then what their needs are. What is the user culture for those places, and how do they behave, and how do they get their needs met based on that? Because then you need to figure out, what is that community going to look like? So what I would highly recommend doing is creating, when possible, create a community that you have, as you don't have to you don't have to be held captive by an algorithm. So if you're building on like a Facebook group, that's going to be a lot harder because Facebook could have changes that happen down the road that are going to affect you greatly, but you don't have a stake in making that decision. So that's going to impact, or could greatly impact, how your members find that group, how your members are able to join that group, if they even want to be on that channel anymore, versus something like Slack or something like Circle, where there's an opportunity for you to essentially own that, where you have the control. So if you want to add something, you can. If you want to delete something, you can. But you're not at the mercy of a third party that's going to dictate that user experience, because that can be very damaging for a community. And then once you decide where it's going to be, it needs to be something that's user friendly. We're still talking from a customer perspective. It needs to be minimal friction. So think about, if I were to give you a completely different user experience versus say, hey, we're going to open a Slack channel. The reason why so many communities open a Slack channel is because I don't have to teach you how to use Slack. You already understand how to use it. And so that friction piece is gone. You understand, once you go in there, maybe there's a bot already set up to welcome you, but there's not a learning curve. And so that's one major piece at the very beginning of that journey that you don't have to worry about now. And then once you have that set up, where would they want to travel within that Slack space? And that's where you can create those channels based on their needs. So like for a partner community, what do partners need? Well, partners would need resources. They'd probably need to hire at some point. They might want educational opportunities or meetup opportunities, like a partner meetup. But once you know where we're going to put them and what those individual needs are, now you're basing it off of what needs to be there, so that when they get in the room, not only does it make sense, but they understand, oh, this is for me. These are my needs, and here they are. I know exactly where to go when I need this. I know exactly where to go when I need that. And so that just makes it a more enjoyable process for them, which is going to make them enjoy their first time there. And then it's also going to help make it easier for them to return, and which is the hard part.
So my next question was how and why should brands be listening? But actually, we just had another question from somebody watching saying, which social listening tools do you find most useful? So I think we can bundle them both together. So mine was how and why should brands be listening? And then the second question is, what are your favorite tools?
I've used a lot of them. I've used Talkwalker and Social Bakers the most. I love them. I would also recommend, if you don't have a big budget, to go ahead and do Google Alerts and Talkwalker Alerts. They're both free. And so there's no excuse to not go ahead and have that. I find that even from like a non-community perspective, from like a PR and comms perspective, it's priceless. You need to be able to open your inbox at any given day. Like I wake up and the first thing I do when I start my day is I Google HubSpot, and then I'll go on Twitter and I search HubSpot, because I need to know what's being said as soon as I start my day, because that's going to dictate, do I need to get an advocate in somewhere? Do I need to respond? Do I need to escalate something?
Am I going to need an extra cup of coffee to get through the morning?
Yes. extra shot of espresso, please. But I think it's a really great opportunity for brands to do that. And you're able to dictate how often you get the alerts. So it can be like daily, weekly, monthly. But I really love that because it sets the tone of my day. Like if everyone's happy and everyone's like lovely, then I don't need to worry about like, do I need to do something in the community to say like, hey, do you have this concern? We're seeing this, or I see this idea on LinkedIn. Is this something that you would like to see too? Like you don't have to have those conversations. You're able to get a lot of other work done. So I'm also a big fan of natively searching, because you don't have to worry about like, did I miss something? Did something fall through the cracks? So I'm a big fan of native. I'm a big fan of Talkwalker Google Alerts, big fan of Talkwalker and Social Bakers. But there's tons of tools for basically every price point. Like I've done a lot of work with Meltwater. I've done work with Mention. I've done work with Brandwatch. I used Crimson Hexagon back in the day before it was sunset. So there's a lot of really great companies that will help guide you through the process. And it really depends on, a lot of the pricing will depend on how many mentions you need. And that really comes down to how big your brand is. I mean, if you're a smaller brand, you're just not going to have unless something terrible happens or you go viral, you're just not going to have the brand mentions that are necessary for you to like do some query and it just like explodes your budget. So, but for anyone that's worried about budget, start with Talkwalker Alerts, start with Google Alerts, do native search. Understand that a lot, because of the API, the majority of the content you're going to see pulled is from Twitter. So I also go on Reddit daily, and I like to go there natively and search. Like Reddit is a treasure trove for people that I wish more people utilize. There's so much information there.
So HubSpot, right? Mm-hmm. So inbound, like king of the pile, like they are the advocates for this stuff. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of fanboys and girls out there who, like yourself included, who are talking about this stuff day in, day out. When you do those searches, you're going to get a lot of content coming back every 24 hours.
Yes.
Like how do you filter through that? How do you make sure that you're kind of picking out the relevant pieces?
Yeah. The first thing I do is I don't use the @ I go straight for the mention of the just HubSpot for multiple reasons. If you think about customer behavior, if you're actually mentioning a brand by name, a lot of what you're doing is you want specifically for them to see it. So it's going to be hyper love or hyper hate. It's not going to be middle. It's usually, I can't, or why is this happening? Our support team is fantastic. So the HubSpot support takes care of all of that. So I don't have to worry about those. But I go through and really determine like what's the tonality, and also is it gaining traction, and what does that look like? Because I need to figure out also, are there trends? So are we seeing something? Are we seeing things that are like multiple things hitting on the same day? And also I do a lot of reading to see, all right, well, you don't like us. What do you not like about us? What do you wish was changed? And is that an opportunity for me to send someone to the ideas forum, be like, we want you to enjoy this product. And if this is what you're missing, put it in the ideas forum. Our product team's amazing. Maybe that's already in the pipeline, or maybe it's something that should be in the pipeline. Let us know. And so it really helps that HubSpot wants to be customer first, because when I'm looking at people saying anything even remotely negative, I know that there's opportunities for us to win and get them to be happy with us, because I know that we're receptive to feedback, good, bad, and ugly, because we want to be customer first. And in order to do that, you have to listen to them.
So you own that. I say own, but you own that community space within HubSpot. What are the teams that you work alongside most?
Well, I don't own community. We have a very big community team.
That's your sphere. I mean,
yes. I'm in the advocacy space, and I work with the community team. Scott Wilder is our head of community. I work with Jenny, who, if you're in the HubSpot community, you know who Jenny is. She's amazing. I love her. But I work with the community team. I work with Maggie at RevOps. I work with basically any department that wants to talk to me, because community and advocacy, because it touches the customer, it touches everything. Just like every department is focused on the community. So anything that's community focused, that's going to bleed into other departments, because every North Star is solving for the customer.
Do you think community is limited to social media? Because that's typically what we talk about when we talk about community.
For most people it is, and it shouldn't be. And I think that we're going to see that as the world opens up again, because I'll give Clubhouse, for example. So you've created this audio space with these micro communities in these rooms, listening to core people. But now we have all these people, even introverts, who are ready to like go out and like make friends and like see people again. So community should not just live online. There needs to be this integration within real life. And Inbound's a really great example of that. Again, you all work in your own worlds, do your own business. And then once a year, you make this pilgrimage to Boston, and you get to see people that have been in your email and in your Slack channel and like all over the place. There needs to be that human component. And there's nothing more human than meeting someone for drinks and hugging them and just being like, oh, it was so nice getting to talk to you in real life, like getting to talk to you face to face. And so I think that that's incredibly powerful. But the communities that are going to do well are going to be the ones who adapt and find opportunities to integrate in real life experiences for those people. Just like we're doing the hug event with all of the hugs around the world.
75 hugs in
5 days. Mm-hmm. So it's a really great opportunity for all those micro communities to meet. And that's what those are. Those hugs are micro communities. But then as soon as there's an opportunity, no matter where they are, to be able to actually meet in person, you know that's what they're going to do. They can't wait. Like, they're so excited. Like, I've missed y'all. Like, I can't wait to see you. There's going to be so many bear hugs. But that's the thing. Like, it has to live off of social, because when it goes off of social, that's when it feels the most human.
Where can community go wrong for a brand?
When you have the wrong goal for it. It's kind of like if you chase the money won't show up. But if you're doing what you love and you really care, like, the money will show up. It's the same thing with community. If your whole goal is, I want to grow this and I want everyone to love us, and then like we'll call it a day, it's never going to happen fast enough for you, because you're going to be chasing benchmarks instead of the experience, instead of like what it's like in those things daily. And the thing about community is it's a living, breathing thing. And so what you're doing is you're essentially creating an ecosystem and hoping and praying that it gets to be where you want it to be. But it's just like a garden. You could have someone with like the greenest thumbs, and they're still going to have some things die. They're still going to have things that don't bloom the way they wanted to, or it happens differently than they expected. But they have to go out there and they have to get out the weeds, and they have to make sure it's fertilized. And they have to make sure it gets the nutrition it needs. Community is very much like a garden. And so if your whole thing is, I just want this to be pretty, it's going to be hard, because when you're in there and you're having to toil, you'll be like, oh, it's just not worth it. And so, but if you come from a customer first perspective, and I want to be people first, and I want to make sure that this is a place for this specific group of people and I want it to match their needs. If you come from that perspective, you'll do the work because you care. And also it will work because they can tell when you care. People can tell when you're just trying to like get them to the next stage versus, no, I actually want you here. I want you happy. I want this to be a good experience for you. People can see through that very quickly.
So what's next for the HubSpot community?
We are continuing to grow it and offer opportunities for resources and ways for our users to come in and really be able to meet their needs. But we're constantly looking for feedback. Like I said, we want to hear from the HubSpot users what they're looking for, what their needs are. We do have a community blog that's been created. So if you've ever wanted to write for HubSpot, it's a really great opportunity to showcase your knowledge and be able to not only be a thought leader within the community, but also be able to help others really invest in the HubSpot community and industry as a whole.
What's your favorite part of the community?
Having people feel welcome.
Nice.
Because there's so many places we want to be, but not all of those places make us feel like we should be there once we get there. So because HubSpot users have such a wide range of experience and wide range of like where they live and cultural differences, and whether they're a partner or a freelancer or a user, or they just took their first HubSpot Academy cert, being able to create a space where all of those people can feel welcome and appreciated is incredibly powerful and is definitely something that we want to create for them.
One of my favorite things about HubSpot is when you see people across LinkedIn share their HubSpot certificates.
Yeah.
And like a real sense of like pride that they've achieved something. But then, and that's nice in itself, but you then see Academy, like the Academy professors.
Yeah, the Academy team is so good at that, like so good at that. Like I praise them all the time. Like they're
and like you see partners doing it, and you see like it's just it is a real community feel, saying like giving somebody a clap because they've actually they felt like they've achieved something, and that's the nice thing about seeing that community develop.
It really is, and I think that there's so much about inbound, especially from HubSpot Academy. It has such a core place in marketers and sales people's hearts, because like for me, my degree is not in marketing. My degree is in English. I was a math teacher for 5 years, like super weird background. My marketing cornerstone is HubSpot Academy. I literally wouldn't be a marketer, whether I was hired by HubSpot eventually or not. I wouldn't be a marketer without them. And I'm not alone in feeling that way. So the fact that the community welcomes, like you said, they celebrate with you, and you're like, this is your entrance into the HubSpot family and the HubSpot community, is incredibly heartwarming, but it also goes into the culture of what we have. So I know that Dharmesh talks a lot about culture. It bleeds into our partners, it bleeds into our users, it bleeds into the community. And so it's very much, we want to help each other. We want each other to grow better. We want everyone to be able to thrive. And the one thing we have in common that really puts us in that place to help each other is HubSpot, which I think is really awesome.
So big top line question, what's next in growth? Where should people be focusing?
Always go from a place of value. If you chase the value and determine like where people are missing out and what they need, I feel like that's always a place to start, because you're going to be able to find a gap opportunity pretty quickly and then figure out how you can do that. A really great example is the app Accelerator that we have, where we know that we can't build absolutely every single thing we want to build, but we have so many incredible partners that can. And so it's all about solving for the customer. So if you come from a place of where are there needs that we don't currently fit, that we don't currently take care of, is that an opportunity for us to go? And that's where that growth comes from, is you're just continually making their job easier. You're helping them grow with their career, but also their network. I think that's really the push for growth.
Christina, thanks for doing the 6 sessions. It's been fun. I really enjoyed it. It's the insight you've got into community is amazing.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate your time.
If anybody wants to follow up with you, how do you want people to connect with you?
I'm that Christina G across Instagram, Twitter, basically anything. You can look for me on LinkedIn, and you can also join the community at HubSpot, community.hubspot.com, if you want to jump in and learn more about what we're doing. I hope everyone has a great and relaxing weekend.
Well, the pubs, this is the first weekend that the pubs are open to drink inside in the UK.
Oh,
And it is currently raining, so I think it'll be a good weekend for a lot of people.
it's going to be a good weekend for a lot of people. I hope you have a great weekend.
Thanks, Christina.